Council, it is 6:30, so if you are in attendance at the meeting, if you could please turn your cameras on so we could have quorum. And thank you, Mayor Allen. You may start the meeting when you're ready.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. I'll call the meeting to order. Can I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ritchie, that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of June 16, 2021 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Due to COVID-19, Council has taken the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, members of Council and staff will be participating in the meeting electronically. The meeting is being live streamed, and you can watch the meeting live on the Township website, www.springwater.ca. You can listen to the meeting by phone during the meeting and by calling 647-558-0588 and using the following meeting ID, 873-6948-1847 and the pound sign after that. This option is available during the meeting, and for those unable to do either of the above and still want to see it afterward, you can go to watch it, the streaming on the Township's YouTube channel, accessible through the website. Council, this evening, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. And pending the outcome of the delegation this evening and further to that, items on the agenda pertaining to the DC bylaws, I will be in conflict.
Thank you. I don't see any others. So we move on to item 3.1, which is a deputation by Ms. Jen Rogers. And we welcome you, and I'll turn the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Mayor Allen, I don't know if you'll recall, I've been before Council and yourself somewhere around November of last year, as I'm trying to work through a secondary suite to put on my property in Hillsdale. The reason I'm coming today is to talk about a few items. The first one I would like to highlight mostly is regarding the development charges that are being applied to this type of unit. Before we proceeded with moving forward with this project, we were informed by the township staff that the development charges would be taken off of this type of project, and that would have saved approximately $26,000 to make this what we see as, and I believe Council sees as, affordable housing as one of the options to make this more affordable and feasible. So we were told that we would be grandfathered into this not applying to our application. So we proceeded with continuing with our project, only to find out within the last short period of time that we were informed incorrectly by township officials, and that our type of project doesn't apply to that grant or whatever it is that I'm not sure the proper word. So there's been a lot of complicating factors, and that'll be my second point I'll get to. But after asking township, can you please help us understand this? Why are we not? Why were we told? Can you help clarify? We did finally receive some communication back, and I'm grateful for that. It took some time for us to get that communication back, and we've been told that I can read the most of it. So the legislative changes for Developmental Charges Act came into effect. They do not include the exemption for detached secondary suites for existing residential dwellings. So we've had discussions with consultants for clarification that a detached secondary suite to an existing residential dwelling is not exempt from development charges. We apologize for the confusion in regards to those charges. So one of the options that was given to us was to come before you and ask for some help. So one of the things is we can request the municipal portion of the development charges, which in our case equal $13,172. Plus there's a $70, I guess, area specific for Hillsdale charge that we ask that you can waive that, given the circumstances that we, to be quite honest, I'm not sure we would have moved forward with this project, given my parents are on a fixed income. With this, we've been given the bill for $26,715. So of that $26,715, I'm asking if there's an opportunity for council to consider that $13,172 plus $70 be waived. And then we would be responsible for the additional portion. And or my question to you is, do you know of any other way that we could approach other portions, such as the county, public education, separate education, to have a similar conversation around this wasn't presented to us as a bill that we would have to take on. So that is a main topic of why I'm here today. And the secondary topic to that is I just wanted to share just a tiny bit about my process, that this has been very difficult. This has not been an easy task to be asking for this secondary suite, to be working through this with the township. It's been actually quite complicated. There's been a lot of misinformation, a lot of conflicting information, I think is maybe more accurate, from different people in the township, and things that have gone terribly wrong outside of what I would expect during COVID times, like paperwork being lost. We've been told to fill in test holes and then said, no, oh, actually you need to dig them again. That's a $500 cost. So I just wanted to really share, because I think you guys sounded very excited at the prospect of affordable housing and this bringing this kind of option to our township. And it's been a very, very difficult process and very not affordable. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. I think in a nutshell, that's what I was wanting to talk to you about today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rogers, for your delegation and for your perseverance. I'm sorry it has been a frustrating experience in different ways for you. We're certainly planning department and building department are paying attention to your application, and we would like to see you get your secondary suite finished. And so I will turn it to council, see whether they have any questions or comments at this time. All right, I'm not seeing any. So again, thank you for coming and making a deputation to us. We're going to have a motion to receive this and certainly have it as input in the whole process that you're going through. I see Deputy Mayor Coughlin has her card up. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Marilyn, and thank you to Ms. Rogers for your presentation this evening. However, as I personally share in your frustration and similar to yours, I will be refraining from the vote this evening. Okay.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive this delegation, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ma, that the delegation from Jen Rogers requesting for reduced building and development charges for secondary suite applications be received. All those in favor? That is carried. So I just clarify if Ms. Rogers is still on the phone, still on the Zoom, and I don't see her now, but there she is. So we are receiving the report, so we aren't making any conclusions, but we appreciate you coming and talking to us. Okay? Thank you. Stay well. Okay, question period. Members of the public can ask questions about items on the agenda, and they can do that by submitting the questions in writing to the clerk by noon of the day of the meeting, or by submitting a request to ask the questions in person in the Zoom meetings, the details of which are contained on the agenda. And so I asked Clerk Ainsworth, have there been any submissions received?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There have been submissions received for this evening's meeting. The first submission is from Peter McGill of 10 Idlewood Drive in Midhurst, and he states, as many are no doubt aware, this year's generational caterpillar infestation has been an enormous burden on ratepayers. The fact that a controlled spray was not done has left residents to look after the infestation on their own. Many are resorting to actions that are not environmentally friendly. There has even been talk that some are using a soap kerosene mixture. This infestation could have been controlled in an environmentally safe fashion by doing a controlled spray in early spring, as was done by many other municipalities. Would the county, in partnership with the township, please commit to helping out residents by embarking on a spray program of BKT or some other safe product in the spring of 2021? The next three submissions are all stating the same information. They have been submitted by Brian and Debbie Rackney, Tony Cicelli and Haley Van Diepen, and they are asking if council would commit to a spray program next year to address the gypsy moth caterpillar infestation, with comments that they are not able to use their outdoor spaces and are very unhappy.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. First, I'll thank you for the comments that were submitted and questions. We're very sympathetic to the problem being faced by many this year with respect to the gypsy moth. Staff and I and other councillors have been communicating with many residents regarding this. Late last November, a staff report was presented to County Council by the County Forester on the county staff. It was concluded at that time not to spray based on the information that was available at the time. And you have to arrange for these things well in advance to consider all sorts of ramifications of that. Our staff in Springwater followed up with the county recently, and they reiterated that aerial sprays were not planned for this year. And as far as for next year, we certainly can, as a council, look into possibilities. So I'll turn it over to our CAO to provide further update on this for consideration. CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to members of council. So you're correct, Mr. Mayor. We have had a number of complaints from individuals across the township as it relates to this matter. And I personally have been in constant contact with the county forester regarding this to see what kind of options the township might have available to us. And there is information that has been provided to a number of individuals who have registered complaints with the township as to different things that they can do on their private property. I have been in discussion, as I mentioned, with the county. They've indicated that this challenge is a private property matter, and those individuals are to try to address them as best they can. Further to that, I reached out to a local provider that provides aerial spray in the county. And to my knowledge, on their website, it does indicate that Simcoe County had a first dose application applied on May 31st, and a second dose was scheduled for today or tomorrow. However, that website does not provide for the area that was to be sprayed. So further follow up with my colleagues, CAO colleagues, I've been advised that to date, out of all the municipalities that have responded to me, which is about 90%, have indicated that none of their municipalities have engaged in an aerial spray program in 2021, and that the spray program that is likely through this provider was based on private property owners as well as cottage associations up in Tiny Township that had sought this spray program. So further to that, I did receive another email today from the county just seeking some further clarification on this matter, knowing this was coming forward tonight. They did advise that they still think it's too early to commit to anything for 2022. They'll continue to follow this. They do feel that this infestation could still collapse due to a virus, and that may well occur this season. So they are keeping an eye on it. They will likely be going to county council in the fall of this year to determine next steps. And should township council wish staff to or direct staff to look into this further with the county and or to explore other options, we're happy to do so. And I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that update. Certainly useful information. So due to the severity of this, and I'll turn to councillors for comment in a moment, it will be coming forward again at County Council, and we will be paying particular attention to it given what's happened this year. So we can't commit at this stage, but certainly our focus and attention is on it, and we will be talking about it over the fall and winter. Councillor Hanna, then Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor, and just for the residents that may be listening, a future consideration item today in a council meeting, I'll be bringing an item forward for council to consider.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. And when you most recently spoke to this will be coming forward to County Council, has there been correspondence among county councillors that I have missed or have not been privy to, or is this just as a regular follower update?
Are you asking CAL Schmidt?
No, sorry, Marilyn, this is just through to yourself. So it was just stated that County Council will be addressing this again in the fall. And was that through communication with who that we will?
No, it was through a comment that CAL Schmidt just made in his discussion, that in his discussion with county, they had indicated that will be coming forward again to County Council this fall. I have had no discussions with them on it.
And then as a follow-up to that, so further to that conversation with the SSEA and NVCA, we do provide invasive species, I'm going to say financial contributions. So are we able then to, as a municipality, to reach out to the NVCA, SSEA, the MNRF, and the county to just formally put together a plan so that residents can expect comment from the municipality? Because to me, this notion of just providing a spray to the entire municipality isn't a sound solution unless we've done our homework, because you can't, and my apologies for lack of a better explanation, you can't save the bees and kill the caterpillars all at the same time. So we have to have a program in place. And like you said, I'm not sure if it's too late this year or how we move forward through this, but as to when residents can be expecting a plan or communication strategy, because this was brought to our attention last fall, and there was strategies provided by the SSEA as to how to prevent or prepare for the gypsy moth infestation. But much like Phragmites or gypsy moths, we do pay for an invasive species program through these service providers. So how do we ensure that the information from our service providers is getting into the hands of our residents?
CAL Schmidt, just for clarification, the invasive species aspect of the SSEA, that was an optional extra charge, if I remember correctly. Did we pay that last year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it has been, in previous years, I believe it was requested as an additional charge, but I believe it may have been rolled into their base levy, if you will, in 2021. So I believe we may be paying for it. So we can definitely, again, as I mentioned, if council wishes, staff and Councillor Hanna, and thank you for bringing that up, an item for a future consideration. I didn't cover that in my discussion, but again, if council wishes us to pursue this, then obviously we would be looking at having discussions with the various agencies to ensure that whether or not we could proceed with this or not, and provide that information back to council in the future, and in addition to potential pricing that the township would need to consider.
Okay, let's continue this and finalize it and items for future consideration when Councillor Hanna brings that up. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we will move on to 5.1 minutes of council. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? Councillor Moore, Councillor Cabral, that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. Any comments with respect to any of these? Okay, the minutes are the special meeting, May 27, 2021, the special meeting of council closed session of that same date, special meeting of council, May 31, 2021, special meeting of council, June 2nd, 2021, regular meeting of council, June 2nd, 2021. All those in favor? That is carried. The correspondence and information items, there are no items. 7.1, approval of recommendation of the Finance and Audit Committee. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma. Any questions or comments with respect to items 7.2 through 7.5? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak to or pull 7.2, 7.3, and 7.5.
Okay, why don't we 7.2, 7.3, and 7. Why don't we just go through each of them, starting with 7.2. 7.2 pertains to 2020 budget and business plan, year-end results. And so let me start with mover and seconder on this specific item, please. Councillor Moore and Councillor Ma. And go ahead then, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad to see we have some extra money there. It's close to $2 million. My recommendation would be, because I can't support what's on there, so my recommendation would be that we put the money into a general fund that would generate some interest. And then when it comes forward at budget time, or before then, if there's things that we have to use money for, we'll have the money available in a general fund. We can take it out of the general fund and use it for whatever we determine is necessary. If not, at budget time, we receive appropriate business cases. We'll have that extra money to be able to approve those business cases. So again, my recommendation would be that the money go into a general fund until we need it, and probably that wouldn't be to budget negotiations, which will be probably even about 5 or maybe a little more than 5 months.
Thank you. So Director Radigan, the general fund that Councillor Hannah is referring to, would that be the tax rate stabilization reserve? Is that logically what that would be, given his comments, Director Radigan?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Hannah. That is correct. I would recommend entering it into the tax rate stabilization reserve and holding it there just for budget discussion purposes.
Okay, other comments? Follow on, Councillor.
Thank you. I would just like to make that as a motion if this is the time to be doing that.
Okay, let me just see what discussion there is, and then I'll come back to you on the motion, please. Any other comments? Okay, then Councillor Hannah has made the motion. Is there a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, go ahead.
My apologies, Mayor Allen. My internet's in and out this evening. And thank you, Councillor Hannah, for those comments and the comment you made earlier about interest accrued. That is something that has been an ongoing discussion through previous councils and this council. With the tax stabilization reserve, what interest is accrued to our taxpayers?
Director Radigan, can you address interest with respect to that reserve?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Allen. If I'm incorrect in speaking here, I'll have CAO Schmidt correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that reserve does accrue interest, as it's not a reserve fund.
And thank you for that, Director Radigan. That was the assumption of myself. So if we're taking $1.7, $1.8 million of taxpayers' money, where does it most benefit the taxpayer to be placing that for the next 5 months before this council decides what to do with it next year?
Okay, I see that card from CEO Schmidt. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify Director Radigan's comment on this, and again, it has been an ongoing discussion, Deputy Mayor. So although the reserve, that specific reserve, does not accrue interest, the township does earn interest on those funds. So it does, that interest goes into our investment income account, which is a general account for the corporation. So again, Director Radigan's correct in what she said, is that the reserve itself does not accrue the interest, but the township does accrue interest on the funds, because it is, you know, dollars in our bank account, if you will, and it does attract interest. It's just that interest doesn't go back to that reserve. That interest goes into a general investment income account for the township.
And
Okay.
as a secondary follow-on to that, Marilyn.
Follow on, go ahead.
And thank you. And then, so the general reserve, or the minimal that we do receive, as we do not have an investment strategy with the municipality, what percent are we earning at the high end on that money?
Well, I'll clarify, we do have an investment strategy, Deputy Mayor, but
Okay.
go ahead,
And
CEO Schmidt. Oh, sorry, Director Radigan. Yep.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Allen. The current HISA account, so the high interest savings, is actually a very low interest. It was in 2020, 0.01975, but it is now even further depleted to, I believe, 0.17. And our actual TD interest is even lower than that. And that's really mainly the cause of COVID. Our interest rates are very low. We're not making anything in terms of the interest on HISA or even TD. But even looking at GICs, it may be longer term, but we're not really seeing any high interest rates at this current moment.
Okay. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Director Radigan. So just to be clear, if we do put all of this money into the tax rate stabilization reserve, the other departments, planning, library, winter maintenance reserve, will not have access to that money until budget.
That's what I gather from the motion to be the case.
I'm just clarifying.
Yep. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for Councillor Moore's question. But having said that, if we needed the money to use for something, I'm sure Director Radigan could confirm that if we needed the money and it was in that there, we would have the option to remove it. My point being is, by putting the money into a general fund, it's not committed, and it gives us an option to do what we need to do, the best interest of Springwater residents.
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth, can you read potential for Councillor Hannah's motion, please?
Yes, thank you. The amendment that I am proposing as wording would be that the motion now before council be amended as follows: remove options A, B, C, D, and E, and add that all surplus funds be allocated to the tax rate stabilization reserve. Is there any additional
Recorded vote, please.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Ritchie.
Yes, we had previously had Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Okay, sorry. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And as I don't sit on the committee for this, and it does specifically say here, as committee or council directs, is it possible then for the amendment to have Director Radigan's opinion on the amendment?
Well, certainly you can ask for her opinion now. Director Radigan, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Allen. Staff's recommendation is to apply the surplus funds as they've been allocated before you, and mainly for the reasons provided within the report. And I can further elaborate. The $47,700 towards the planning reserve, that's the direct savings from a result of not spending legal funds, which we could put towards the legal reserve in planning, which would then help offset any future costs related to, let's say, planning matters. The 62,197, staff are recommending that go to the Library Capital Discretionary Reserve Fund. And that is the direct result of savings from the library itself. So that has been forwarded to the library, and the board is requesting or has provided that direction and requesting it be put towards the Library Capital Discretionary Reserve. The 72,605 to the Winter Maintenance Reserve, that's the direct result of winter control savings in 2020. So that's savings from contracts as a result of not plowing as much as a result of weather conditions, let's say. The 630,833, and we're asking that to go to the tax rate stabilization. And there are reasons listed in the report that could be utilized towards the salary compensation review or any other future appeals as well. But that is directly the result of salary and benefit savings. And that's a result of staff gapping that occurred in 2020, retirements that occurred. And in addition to that, any mitigation efforts that council and senior staff put in place as a result of COVID. So not hiring temporary staff or contract staff. And the remaining $1,131,312, staff is recommending it be put towards reducing the township's unfunded capital. And currently, the township's unfunded capital is at approximately a little bit over $2 million. Thank you.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, and appreciate the comments from the Director of Finance. My point being is, by putting the money into a general fund, that doesn't mean that they can't end up going for the items that are being listed here tonight by staff, but it gives us the option to use that money if we need to. And anybody that's read, which I'm sure all council and staff have, is items 7.3 and 7.5. There's a strong indication there that we're going to need a lot of finances in the next few years. Again, having this money available to be used wherever we need it between now or at budget time, I think is the best interest of taxpayers. And while I have the floor, please ask for a recorded vote from the clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I wonder if I could ask Director Radigan to speak to the library in particular and the discretionary reserve fund that they had prior to the purchase of the Hasty Tract property and where they find themselves now. I understand that there was some funds taken from the library reserve. Is that the case?
Director Radigan?
That's for you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Moore. The only funding that would have been used towards the purchase of the Hasty Tract would be the development charges in relation to the land. And that was approved through council during, I believe, 2019. But
do you remember how much that was? Sorry.
I apologize, not off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
I'm just really trying to, I'm just trying to outline that they have, as an independent sort of source from the township, they have already gone without and have had their fund reduced considerably. So I'm just wondering if there would be an appetite to remove the library from this.
Okay, let me just hold that on pause. CEO Schmidt, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment regarding the allocation that's before council tonight. The comment about being used for future purposes, definitely that could be the case. And again, I would just suggest that these are one-time funding dollars that are available. So any recurring costs that may occur in the future, this would only help for the 1 year, if you will. And just remind council too that the unfunded capital is sitting at, I believe, Director Radigan mentioned it's 2.1 or just over 2 million. That's the tax base side. I believe it's more than that, and the other portion is to be funded from DCs. Keep in mind that if we don't fund that $2.1 million, then we will have to issue debt, and now you're going to have to pay additional interest and such on that debt. So again, we are looking at it in the sense of trying to reduce a financial obligation that the township could have in the future.
Well, let's just clarify that. So what you're saying is that the putting it in a tax rate stabilization reserve doesn't accrue interest, but keeping it from the township's unfunded capital results in us paying interest?
Clarify, Mr. Mayor. So putting money into a reserve the reserve does not attract interest. The township does build interest on those dollars. It just goes into a general corporate investment account as opposed to going back to the reserve. So it does build, the township does build interest on those funds. It just, again, doesn't go back to the tax rate stabilization reserve specifically. What on the contrary, if we were to use those dollars, the 1.1 right now, it does help to go reduce an unfunded capital liability right now, that if we don't put dollars towards that, then essentially we will likely be in a position that we'll have to raise our debt and issue debt and hence pay interest charges, additional interest charges on top of that debt, because it will likely be for a 10 to 15 year time frame.
And when would that increasing of debt and resulting interest occur?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, depending on when we issue that debt, if it was to happen shortly, it would probably be incurred commencing in 2022.
Which would be post-budget finalization.
It would be included in, based on the timing, I would assume that we would likely try to include it in the 2022 budget.
Which to Councillor Hanna's motion wraps it all into the right time to be evaluating this, subject to any emergencies. Councillor Deputy Mayor Coughlin and Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Marilyn. And for clarification, I have two questions. The first one would be then, so as our general corporate investment account, what do we earn on that? And what is the cost associated to our township unfunded capital debt, percentage wise?
Who wants that? Director Radigan, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Deputy Mayor Coughlin, I'll do my best to respond to that. So through our investment strategy through HISA, we are receiving very minimal interest. However, the debt that we're speaking of is actually internal debt. So we owe it to ourselves. I know it's confusing, but it's as a result of capital projects that did not essentially have a funding source. So what we are trying to do is repay that debt. In addition to that, we are on the verge of DC debt as well. If you take a look at the DC reserve fund schedule, you'll notice we're looking at 4.9 in actual DCs, but then of that 4.9 is almost a little less than 4.9 of internally funded development charges. So I would just caution that in the future, we may be, and we will be, based on the long range financial plan, having to cash flow, front cash flow development charges. And as a result, I would discourage any further internal debt as a result of that.
Okay, Councillor Cabral. Oh, sorry, you had a second question, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
And thank you, Marilyn. And just my second point is further to Councillor Moore's point in that with the library being at arm's length and it being a battle every year at budget time for allocation, if this money was taken this money was taken from taxpayers, I've decided on this council to be allocated to the library and was unspent for whatever reason this year, I do believe that money should stay within the library, as it is a battle annually, as it is a soft service to get that back into our libraries. And I do believe that as we come out of this reopening strategy, it again is going to be a soft service overlooked. So I would like to see the library portion removed. If Councillor Hanna is willing to amend again, I would like to see that remain within the library, please.
Councillor Hannah, what's your consideration of adjusting the amendment?
I'm a very reasonable person, and if that's where council would like it to go, I could support that.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Cabral.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, that's not such a bad deal, but I do like the idea of possibly keeping it more liquid. And the only reason for that is, as much as we're seeing all this light at the end of the tunnel, there's also some talk about the fourth wave. And given the situation that Britain now finds itself in with the variant, I kind of think that maybe it might be in our best interest to hold it because it doesn't really take away from anything. But if anything does happen, we're in a better position, I think, to deal with it in the short term.
Okay. All right. So Clerk Ainsworth, with the tweaking of the library 62,197, is the movers okay with that? The seconder all right with that? Yes, okay. You're the mover and the seconder. Okay. Any further discussion? Anybody want it read again, or ready to vote? All those, it's recorded vote requested by Councillor Hannah.
Thank you.
Did you have a point to make? Sorry, did you have a further point to make, Deputy Mayor?
No, sorry, Mayor Allen, no further point, just clarification on the resolution as before us.
Okay, can you read it again, please, Clerk Ainsworth?
Yes, thank you. The amendment before you is that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Remove options A, C, D, and E, and add that all remaining surplus funds be allocated to the tax rate stabilization reserve. So option B for the library would remain in the main motion.
Okay, right. Okay, recorded vote then, please proceed.
Thank you. Recorded vote was requested by Councillor Hannah. When I state your name, please state yes or no in favor of the amendment. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Hannah?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Yes.
And Mayor Allen?
Yes.
That amendment is carried.
And we have to review the main motion then?
Yes,
Clerk
Mayor
Ainsworth.
Allen. Would you like me to read the main motion as amended?
I don't think we need to go through the whole thing. Any questions with respect to the main motion? We need a mover and seconder for it. Councillor Hannah moves. Councillor Cabral seconds. Any questions with respect to the main motion as amended? All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to 7.3, 2020 Statement of Development Charge and Cash in lieu of Parkland Reserves. Can I have a mover and seconder to get that on the floor? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma. Any questions or discussions with respect to this? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. Just the cash in lieu of parkland. I always have an issue with that, if it's infill. I understand there's parks in the area and there's no need for collecting money for parks in the area where it's infill. However, when it comes to new subdivisions, I just want to make sure that council sends the message that because we're having to go for higher density, we're going to have less or smaller yards, smaller backyards. We're going to need open space. So I would suggest that we remind staff that we're more in favor of having usable parkland in new subdivisions or new development instead of cash.
Okay, so that is a comment, right? There's not a question to that, Councillor.
Yeah, it's just a comment. Maybe other members of the council feel the same way. I don't know.
I like parks. I agree. All right, so we have a mover and seconder, and the motion is that the report from the Director of Finance regarding the 2020 Statement of Development Charge and Cash in lieu of Parkland Reserve Funds dated June 7, 2021 be received, and that in accordance with Section 43 of the Development Charges Act 1997 and Section 42 of the Planning Act, the staff report entitled 2020 Statement of Development Charge and Cash in lieu of Parkland Reserve Funds and its appendices be submitted to Council for approval and sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. All those in favor? That is carried. We're at 7.4, which is 2020 reserves and reserve fund statement information report. Mover and seconder to get this on the floor. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore, questions or comments? Okay, the motion reads that the 2020 reserves and reserve fund statement information report be received as information. All those in favor? That is carried. 7.5, long-range financial plan policy recommendations. Mover and seconder to get that on the floor, please. Question, Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, questions, discussion with respect to this? Okay, the motion reads that the report from the Director of Finance regarding the long-range financial plan, policy recommendations, and next steps dated June 7, 2021 be received, and that the Finance and Audit Advisory Committee recommends Council approve the policy recommendations outlined in Section 8.2 of Appendix A, the long-range financial plan report prepared by Watson Associates. Further, that staff be directed to ensure through the development charges bylaw update that the long-range financial plan is provided for. All those in favor? And it's carried. Action reports. Option item. First one is 8.1 outdoor digital signage program. And mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please. Okay, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Moore. And so we had an extensive report with options. This was done by Brianna Dean. Questions, discussions with respect to this? Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. My discussion or my comments are twofold. The first would be location, and the second would be the understanding from the Lions Corporation. The first being locations. This has come before this council and councils past, and I do believe that having electronic signage at our north, south, east, and west locations of Springwater is beneficial to the residents and visitors, for that matter. Understanding that this before us this evening is asking for our first and second location. I will be later, after following discussion, be proposing that there would be all 4 locations indicated in this, as I believe our third and fourth locations will require MTO permits or MTO permission, in that from a Hillsdale and Midhurst understanding with MTO roads. Understanding that our Hasty track is not quite to where we would like to see it, or we cannot move forward with it at this point. So the Midhurst, the southern location, is not at a position to be moving forward at this time. Also, our most easterly Hillsdale would be on a Highway 93, and also again requiring MTO permitting. My question then this evening is to council's understanding if it would be an opportunistic for us to move forward with our north and west locations, as they do not require MTO permission, but also to engage in the conversation from a staff perspective with the MTO so that we can be forward thinking or advantageous with that, so that should we want to move forward with a east and south location, we are at that point with that. And secondly, Mayor Allen, through you to CEO Schmidt or the Lions, just an understanding that the there was much discussion with this signage program through the Midhurst Hall Board and also the Minising Hall Board as to ownership over the messaging being done. And I just want to ensure that the control, control is a horrible word, but it comes down to control over the messaging on that with this donation from the Lions Club, that we are all on the same page with the control and the messaging moving forward. So first would be location and second would be control.
CEO Schmidt, who's best to comment on those? Is Manager Dean on? I don't see her name. Is she on the call? Manager Dean? Coordinator Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. So for the locations, I think I will leave that more to council discussions for it, but you are correct in the MTO approvals needed on the Midhurst Road locations as well as the Hillsdale Road locations. So I have been back and forth with MTO. The thing with the MTO approvals is we really do need a specific exact site that we would be putting this sign, as well as the exact sign design and the size of the signs to get further information and full detail from the MTO. So we know we will need that. We know there will be setbacks, sightline requirements in all highway traffic acts. But those locations, again, just needing the further approvals. Once we have a sign design, that will really help in that conversation and furthering those decisions too. And to knowing where the approval will stand on those MTO roads. And then in discussion with the Lions Club and the messaging content. So I know we do have Lion Webster on the call tonight if there was any specific questions for the Lions Club. So in the discussions and the proposals with them, they did have the draft sign policy to review and look at, and they are comfortable with the draft sign policy. They do understand that the township does have certain messaging at times that we would want to get out in a timely manner or take precedence, especially something like emergency messaging that would kind of go up and overboard any type of messaging that was on the sign. But they do want to have consideration for consistent messaging from the Lions Club, and that their, for example, monthly meetings, the truck draw, and other events that they are involved in would have places on the sign, and that there would also be, for example, placeholder messaging per se. So for their monthly meetings, for example, if there was room on the sign for content and other sign wasn't up, that would kind of be a standard placeholder, call it, message that could be on the sign at those times when the timing allowed for it.
Okay, thank you for that information. And Lion Webster, welcome on the call. Thank you. And thank you to the Lions for their kind offer for assistance with respect to this sign. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. A couple of comments and maybe a question. And once again, I do want to extend my appreciation and my thanks to the Lions Club. They do phenomenal work and been a big part of the community forever. So good for them. I just wanted to ask with respect to the policy. These signs obviously will carry, let's call them generic township messaging that would be applicable to all the signs in all the locations at the same time. Would they also be able to be geographically appropriate to the area where they are housed? And what I'm saying there is, would all the signs always have the same messages, or would we be able to have a message that was specific to the Elmvale sign and another message that would be specific to the Midhurst sign? Because obviously there's going to be messages coming out that wouldn't be as relevant in different areas. So I just want to know if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I presumed it would be the latter, but I'll let Coordinator Dean clarify that.
Yep.
Through your worship, through to Councillor Cabral, yes, that is correct. We can have location-specific messaging on the signs. I can't think of a great example of that right now. I was going to use maybe a local event, but a lot of times even those local events are good to talk to in other communities. Yes, definitely there would be things that would come up that may be specific to a certain location or more targeted to that geographic area, and those can be targeted to specific signs.
Perfect. And my other comment that I had was with respect to, I wanted to get a sense from council, not council, but staff. In all the years that the other signs have already been in place, and there's been volunteers putting up the messages. I'm just curious to know whether or not we've had any specific complaints about the messages that have been posted. And in addition to that, I'm also wondering if it might not be possible to allow some of the folks that are in these particular groups that have been managing these signs over the years have some kind of a role to play rather than, I mean, we're going to set the policy, but I'm just wondering if volunteers might not be in a position to help us coordinate this and alleviate staff from having to do necessarily a lot of the legwork. So I'm just wondering if there's opportunity for that moving forward as well.
Coordinator Dean, just to piggyback on that question, my interpretation of the report was that the manual signs, which are revenue generating for the communities, would still be allowed to continue. Is that correct or not correct as part of the question of Councillor Cabral?
Through your worship to Councillor Cabral. So just on the first comment, I am not aware of many conflicts in messaging that have gone up in the signs and come in as complaints to the township. Possibly there has been in the past, but not, I would say not something that we come across frequently by any means. And again, the signs are operated by our CRAs, so the message content is fairly community initiative driven or celebratory message driven, for example. And in regards to the manual signs that are currently in place, the CRAs have asked and suggested that they would like the opportunity at this time to have signs still in place at different locations, especially as the program is becoming a phased-in program and maybe not in all different areas of the township at this time. So, for example, I'll use Hillsdale as an example. If that sign location did receive a digital sign on it, we would look to put it at the same location the manual sign was. So in that case, the opportunity for the manual sign would not be there in that location, but staff have looked around and researched a bit in some other communities, and in certain communities they have, for example, a message board around a certain mailbox kiosk that would be one of the main kiosks for the community, or at another location in the park that could present opportunities to have messaging throughout the community. And again, there can be other digital messaging to look at. So staff at this point have not made any recommendations for fully removing the signs throughout the township, but we would look to move to a process of, once all the digital signs are out, having the message content be on those digital signs, and just trying to ensure that we didn't have, I'm going to say sign pollution, but in a light way, but sign pollution throughout the township.
Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an observation in the report, the very last paragraph, it says the council review the draft outdoor digital signage policy and present staff with their comments in order to finalize the draft policy at future council meetings. I'm totally supportive of the sign in Elmville that's sponsored by the Lions Club. I'm just wondering if it'd be appropriate tonight to hold off on approving the second sign in the location until council has a chance to submit their comments to staff, and we can review them in the future so we can move on further tonight.
Coordinator Dean.
Yep, through your worship to Councillor Hannah. So I know the Lions Club, for example, would really like a decision to be made on the Elmville location tonight. They, with their donation, they do have dollars set aside in their every year fundraising dollars that they have allocated in two different funding allotments to the township. So they would really like to see that project move forward to ensure it satisfies their kind of funding donation request. So yes, if there was the wish of council to have further discussion and review of the policy or review of future locations, that would be something that is definitely, I guess, proposed or considered by council. But again, I would just like to mention that the Lions Club would really like to see a final decision made on the location request for the Elmville sign.
Follow on, Councillor Hannah.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, through you, Mayor, to Coordinator Dean. Yes, I was supporting that. We moved forward with the Elmville sign with the Lions Club, but the second sign, we have an opportunity for council to submit their ideas and advance it at a different date.
Okay, Councillor Ma and then Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through to you. My question is, thank you to the Lions Club also for the donation. It was a wonderful thought. Second of all, what decisions were made for the second locations instead of the other one? Was it traffic? I'm okay with menacing to wait. In the future, it'll be all uniformed anyhow. Also, if we have to hold off on the second location, I'm okay with that too. But we really like to see that in Ant Mills, even though Hillsdale has the same traffic as Ant Mills. The CRA would like to see the Ant Mills sign go there. But I just want to know what came about, how the decision was made for the Midhurst or for the Hillsdale and Ant Mills location.
Coordinator Dean.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Ma Chapman. So yes, the main recommendations for those two locations were looking at the road and traffic patterns in those locations and looking at some main arteries in different areas of the township. So that was the consideration for that, as opposed to looking and just asking for kind of, I guess, an open recommendation for a future location. But again, all locations can definitely be considered in future research and future reports. And I would just have to confirm Manager Hawes on the line, so he may know too for sure, but the roadway that the menacing sign would fall into for, again, what approval process it would follow.
Manager Haw.
Hi, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Chapman. I believe that the sign in Minnesing would go where the new mailboxes are, so that would potentially affect the MTO corridor with Highway 26. So likely a permit would be required there through them.
Follow on, Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So the one potentially in Ant Mills doesn't have to go through MTO?
Ant Mills, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Chapman. No, that one would go through the County of Simcoe.
Okay, who had a card up? Follow on, Councillor Ma.
Sorry, Mayor Allen. Question: are we looking at the near future to budget for the other signs, or are we talking about that at budget time?
Yeah, CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Ma Chapman. I believe that was, I believe what Deputy Mayor Coghlan may be alluding to earlier in the discussion, suggesting that the other two locations would be part of an amendment to the motion. Right now, the direction that staff has received is to, when we got the modernization funds back in 2019, was to go out with a pilot project, and we have $100,000 assigned to this project. So we are hoping to get 2 signs, but we haven't received any further direction from council to proceed with any other signs at this time. So if those other signs are not included in the 10-year capital plan, that'd be something that council would have to direct staff.
One final comment then on this round, Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And with that said, would it be less expensive if we went with 4 signs instead of 2 and 2, or would, I guess, an RFP will have to be submitted to know that? I'm guessing. I'm just wondering if the same company does all 4 signs, it could be a cost savings.
Before I go to Coordinator Dean on that, the spread of costs was 38,000 to 175,000. That's a big spread. Maybe you could just address a little bit more detail on the your cost estimates, Coordinator Dean, given the fact of Councillor Ma's point, if we go for the 4-4 price, how much does that affect?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the spread of the costs, yes, it was a significant kind of, we'll call it lower end and higher end cost. So the higher end cost was from a corporate telecommunications company. So I reached out to a few different sign companies, some being more local sign companies, and then a telecommunications company to get preliminary estimates based on some of the example locations in the report and what the estimated cost would be. So I don't expect we would be at the $175,000 because I think based on the RFP process and the hopefully submissions that would come in, we would probably have some of the more local sign companies that would bid on the project. So for example, there's sign companies in our surrounding area that do the Simcoe County District School Board signs. So there's a newer one at EDHS in Elmville, and as well as Stainer Collegian and some of the schools in Barrie. So those are done by sign companies, and those are in the price range of that $40,000 to $50,000 signs for that type of sign that are at those locations. And that example was provided in one of the appendixes of the report. So that would be more in that $40,000 price range. So the big cost of the sign is having the double-sided screens. So the screens themselves are about $12,000. And then the additional is the actual monument or frame, and then the installation of the project, as well as the hydro component.
And Coordinator Dean, do you have any idea of if we were to commit to 4 signs, what that would do to the price per sign?
I unfortunately do not know 100% whether there would be a large cost savings or not. Again, I think on the digital screen side of it, we wouldn't necessarily set cost savings there, but potentially on the installation and the actual work side of the project.
Okay, I'd go to Councillor Moore if she's still there. There we go. You had your credit.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So through you, Mayor, to Coordinator Dean, what consideration was given to the south end of the township? So were we looking at down the road, Sunnydale Road or George Johnston Road or Center Vespra, seeing that that's population growth is going to be there?
Coordinator Dean?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Moore. So currently no future consideration per se was given to any other location in particular. So the south end, so the kind of the Grenfell or Center Vesper, and there is currently a community recreation sign located at the Grenfell Community Center. So potentially that south end could have a future sign at it as well. So currently I was looking at the community, so the community centers or the community recreation associations for sign locations, that is how it was originally talked about in the modernization funds, but not to say in the south end, as we were looking at phased in projects, that a different location couldn't be presented as the most considerable, I guess, beneficial location for a sign in at that end of the township.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Conlon.
Excuse me, Mayor Allen, point of order. I've been having my sign up for a number of times. You said you would be getting back to me. I'm feeling a little bit disrespected, sir, and I'm happy to let Deputy Mayor Coughlin go ahead of me, but I just wanted to make the point that when someone gets an opportunity to have a follow-on, they seem to get it, but quite often I'm cut short. And I would just appreciate it, sir, if you might have a little bit more consideration moving forward, that when a member of council does want to speak, that they're all afforded the same opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Cabral, whenever you have a follow-on, I do recognize that. There are a lot of cards up on this topic. I never do ignore any councillor, and I don't appreciate that comment coming from you with respect to that topic. So we'll go to you. You can have your word, and then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Unless
Thank you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Cabral wants to rock, paper, scissors for it.
That's okay. Go ahead.
No, I was trying to make light of the situation, Councillor Cabral. It was not my intention to cut you off.
No, I understand, and you didn't. It's just that I did wait patiently, and I just felt like I was. What I wanted to say, Mayor Allen, is I would like to see the Lions Club sign move forward. I think they've done an amazing job. If we want to discuss the location for the other sign and we want to discuss putting it somewhere else, and it sounds to me like that we're all in agreement that that portion could be put over, I would like to propose a motion basically to that effect, that the recommendation move forward with the Lions Club sign in Elmvale, and that we defer the location for the second sign back to staff for a further report down the road.
Okay, so that's an amendment to this motion then. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hannah? Okay, now I'll go to Councillor Ritchie.
I think maybe Councillor Ritchie was offering a second to Councillor Cabral's motion. I don't know that he has a request to speak.
Mayor Allen, I see
No,
that.
he had his card up.
Yes, Mayor Allen.
Go ahead.
Request to speak. I'm going to support the that amendment to Councillor Cabral. Hillsdale's in my ward. Of course, I want to see a sign there. The old sign that they've got, and you know very well too, Mayor Allen, and I ask you get off the fence and speak to it as well. The sign that they're using is old, it's decrepit, and yet God bless them, they're always out there, and there's always somebody paying a few bucks to put something up because we raise a bit of money that way. But I agree with deferring this so we can get a better handle on it. I think in all fairness, I would like to see staff do a little more digging, especially on the price. We can get a price, maybe a cheaper price for 4, and have Hillsdale in there as well. But I would like to see one. We've spent several millions of dollars on the Hasty track, and there's no reason why we couldn't put a sign there. There's hydro there. We can cut a few trees out. There's going to be an ambulance center going in there and other things. That there would help represent the south end of the township, whether you're being Grenville, Hillsdale, whether you be a Midhurst or Menacing. That'd be a real showpiece for the whole township right there. And I like to see more emphasis done in that regard. But for tonight, I would support deferring for now and move forward with the Lions Club. And I would look forward with some kind of signage or what we can entail as to what's going to be coming forward in replace of the one that's there. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Alan. And I would agree with Councillor Ritchie that the gateway to spring water is soon to become the Hasty track. And I do believe that as part of our, I don't want to say negotiation, but as part of the build, there will be an electronic sign on that property. And I do apologize if that's simply an assumption of mine. However, this discussion before this council and councils previous, we've had the Maple Syrup Festival come forward with the exact same location as the Lions. We had the Midhurst Hall Board come forward with request for electronic signage in Midhurst at the library location. We've also had the Menacing Hall Board come forward with, I believe it was $75,000 at the time that they had saved up. So these proposals have been forward before this council and councils previous. And in my opinion, the reason that it continues to be a conversation and not an action plan is that it's a political discussion. It is this council choosing locations and choosing a path forward with locations. Staff, in my opinion, do want the communication and the messaging to get out. But as for the locations, it would be to the discussion of the discretion of this council. I would like us to obviously move forward with the Elmvale location with our first sign. I would also like to see us move forward with Anton Mills as the second location, as it is our westwardly artery into Springwater. I would also like, as part of this motion, to put forward an amendment that staff begin discussions with MTO when we do move forward with hasty tracks. We will have to have these discussions as to a location signage, digital signage, as again with the Highway 93 location in Hillsdale. I think that putting forward those 4 locations by this council tonight would put forward an action plan. Again, with these being budgetary items, it would require coming back to council, but at least the ball's rolling in a direction decided by this council, and one that can move the conversation forward. So again, I would like to see the conversation, the amendment tonight that I would be putting forward. Actually, there's an amendment on the table, and I will.
There is an amendment already.
Sorry, yes, Clerk Ainsworth, and I don't know how to make that possible because.
Okay.
I'll stop talking then.
CEO Schmidt, and then or Clerk Ainsworth, and then CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just procedurally, so Councillor Cabral's motion is to have the Elmvale sign location confirmed, and the remainder of the sign locations either referred back or deferred back to staff. I have to seek clarification on that. So if that motion passes, your amendment would not be germane to the motion. If Councillor Cabral's amendment fails or does not pass, then you would be free to propose your amendment seeking the 4 sign locations.
Follow on, Deputy Mayor.
And thank you. My last point on this, and for further clarification, there is budget allocation for 2 signs in this calendar year, or this budget moving forward. So by moving forward with Elmvale and Anton Mills, there would be no additional allocation or cost to the taxpayers.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe address Deputy Mayor's comment there. There would be no budget implication should the RFP come in under $100,000. But if it's over that, then obviously there may be. I just wanted to speak, Mr. Mayor, further to the comments from council too. Obviously, staff will do as directed by council. I guess my only question back to council would be is that it sounds like there's been some discussion about Elmvale, but not really sure, or some uncertainty about the second location. I guess staff, I'm not really hearing, I guess, is what further information does council require in order to make that decision on the second location? I understand that there was Councillor Hanna mentioned about the sign policy or the signage policy, which, with all due respect, we're going to have to issue an RFP anyways, and it's going to take some time to do that. So you have time to review that policy in advance of awarding the RFP. So I'm just, to be quite honest with you, I'm asking what further information would you be seeking from staff in order to make a decision on the second location, or are you simply wanting additional time to consider that? And that's fine too. I'm trying to figure out from a staff perspective what else we need to do to move this thing forward. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to see some provision for the four signs coming. I want Elmvale to move forward now. We've heard about Anton Mills. I've talked to Hillsdale. They didn't get back to Coordinator Dean with respect to follow-up. They are using their existing manual sign. They'd be able to continue to do it. They do eventually want to have a sign. I've had discussion with them. I'm supportive of that. I'm supportive of the signs in those 4 locations: Elmvale, Anton Mills, Hillsdale, and of course the Hasty Track. So I'd like to see some sort of verbiage in the amendment that does talk to the 4 locations, subject to budget approval in future. Okay, let's. We've got Councillor Hanna and then Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Mayor. And as at least Perry Ritchie will know, but the rest of the council might be aware of the fact that there's $10,000 earmarked in the township budget that belonged to Midhurst sign that was fundraised for. and it was to put a sign in front of the the Midhurst Library. In that, the Midhurst Library will be eventually moving over to the Hasty track. I believe that $10,000 would be better utilized instead of putting a sign there, putting a sign over the Hasty track. And I think Perry Ritchie's right. I know it's in Ward 4, not in Ward 5, but I don't believe there would be any. I'd be surprised if there was any opposition from the residents of Midhurst because it's across the road. And I think it would be something that would enhance that corner and obviously identify the Hasty track as the gateway to Midhurst. I'm sorry, to Springwater. So I think that going forward, if we're not going to defer this, then I think that has to be included in the motion tonight as well.
So would the mover and seconder of the amendment be willing to adjust for a friendly amendment to the amendment to incorporate the 4 locations and incorporate what Councillor Hannah just stated? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm fine with it. I mean, that's part and partial to the deferment back to staff for the other 3 locations and whatever that they wanted to do. As long as we are able to move forward with the Lions Club sign in Elmvale. And I'm more inclined to want to move forward with it because they are the Lions Club, Elmvale and District Lions Club. And they've worked hard and diligently and they're providing funds to the community. So it would be I think it would be not a very palatable thing, let's say, to not move forward with their sign, but I'm certainly open to the amendment to defer it back and have these other issues addressed as part of the amendment.
But to CAO Schmidt's point, what is the hope or expectation of deferring it back to staff that they will be able to come forward with further information, Councillor Cabral?
Well, it's not, well, because we're all looking for more information on the particulars of why maybe Hillsdale. I mean, I understand why Hillsdale can't get their sign right now because it's a provincial highway, given the same thing for even maybe on Highway 26. I understand that. But we seem all comfortable to move forward with the Elmvale sign. And it seems to be the location for the other signs or the acquiring of the other signs that is holding us up. So if an amendment works to satisfy council on the other 3 signs moving forward, as long as we can approve the Elmvale sign for the Elmvale and District Lions Club this evening. I just love to see that move forward. Okay.
Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, I think spoke earlier there, this is Dean, is it? Anyways, about with the 4, and the reason for the deferral, to answer your question, is let's see what kind of a price we can get for 4 of them. And by the time we get around to this, we're going to be coming up the budget. It'd be worth taking a look at. So it'd be worth moving forward with the Elmvale project, deferring the rest of them. Let's see what kind of what kind of a number we can come up with to identify a price tag on these things going forward.
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth, you're working on the modification to the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. I do have a couple of questions for clarification while I am drafting the amendment.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, it's just due to as much discussion as there has been. So the amendment that I have drafted would be to remove paragraph 4, which is the paragraph that speaks to approving the second location, amending paragraph 5 to replace the word 2 with 1 in regards to the request for proposals, and remove the words and blank to select the second location. And a third paragraph speaking to the deferral of the remainder of the digital signs I have, and that digital signs for Hillsdale, Anton Mills, and Midhurst be referred back to staff to provide further information on, and this is where I need guidance, I have on timelines and approval processes, but I'm not sure that I'm capturing exactly what Councillor Cabral is seeking for that piece of the amendment.
Well, the other aspect was costs that we've talked about. So the further information on costs, if there were 4 signs. So incorporate the cost element. Councillor Ma and then Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I know we always said 4 signs. I'm not sure if that was brought up and or if I just mentioned it, but I don't know if I can say this, but I totally agree going ahead with the Elmville sign because the Lions Club making that wonderful donation. Go ahead with one of the other ones since we've already budgeted the $100,000 for this year. Then bring it back to council for the other locations and see if we can get a price on those other 4. I'm going to guess Hillsdale, Minising, Midhurst, and say Center Vespra. I think all signs, those 4 signs, plus the 2 that hopefully pass for tonight is my thought or my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And just to recap, I think we're all saying the same thing in a different way. I think from what I'm interpreting from Councillor Cabral is he is anxious to see the Elmville move forward and would like to separate the motion before us should council choose to delay. I'm not hearing a delay from the rest of council. What I'm hearing is that we have agreed through Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Hannah, and myself that the north, south, east, and west, be it Midhurst and Hasty Track, Hillsdale as locations, also Anton Mills, and then furthermore through Councillor Ma Chapman and Councillor Moore that after those first 4 signs are implemented by this council, not in this budget, not in this year, the additional 2 would be Minising and Center Vespra for communication as avenues of communication moving forward. My concern is that this evening I would like to see this council move forward with the Hillsdale and our Midhurst, our Hasty Track location, as I do believe that the red tape before us, as it is an MTO road, is going to be time consuming. So if we start that process now, we will see it come to fruition earlier than need be. So the only amendment that I would put forward this evening is that and council move forward with preliminary discussions, MTO, with sign locations as Coordinator Dean is located. Once we have chosen the type of sign, the size of the sign, and the additional locations in specifically Hillsdale, we know where the Hasty Track would be, that staff would be able to further provide council with an indication of cost and time for our 3rd and 4th. However, this evening I would like to see it move forward that Elmville and Anton Mills be our 1st and 2nd locations, with the anticipation that our 3rd and 4th would be Hillsdale and Hasty Track, based on priority or based on build of Hasty Track. So I'm just trying to I guess summarize the discussion that I've been hearing this evening.
Councillor Ritchie.
Mayor Allen, if you're going to move forward with a second one, I'm going to put Hillsdale back on the table. Either we defer, we move out forward with Elmville tonight, and we defer the others, and go and see what kind of pricing we can get, because that's what we talked about earlier. Now that's if they're going to keep throwing Mills at us, then I'll put Hillsdale back on the table.
Okay.
And
Clerk Ainsworth, can you, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And further to that, Councillor Ritchie, I fully support having Hillsdale as a location and a primary location within Springwater, as it is an artery. However, I do believe if we just started the discussions this evening with the MTO, it would be a year or 2 from now.
So that's not true, because Brianna Dean already said that all they want to know is what are you going to give them, and you'd have probably an answer in about 3 days. So that's not true. So a point of order.
All right.
And thank you for the point of order.
Still think about a sign, Don.
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth, can you read the amendment, please, as you now have it?
Thank you. So the amendment still on the table is originating from Councillor Cabral and seconded by Councillor Hannah. That the motion now before council be amended as follows: remove paragraph 4, which speaks to the second location. Amend paragraph 5 to replace the word "to" with "one" and remove the words "and blank." And add paragraph, and that digital signs for Hillsdale, Anton Mills, and Midhurst be referred back to staff to provide further information on timelines, approvals, processes, and costs. That is the amendment that is currently on the table, and it is up to Councillor Cabral whether it be amended or withdrawn.
That's okay, Councillor Cabral? Councillor Hannah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're going to vote. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That is carried. Do you have to read? So you don't have to read the main motion in that case.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Only if council wishes to have it read.
No, I think we know what the result is. Okay. All right, moving on to action reports. 9.1. Can I move her and second her to get this on the floor? Councillor Hannah.
Excuse me, Mayor. I'm sorry. I asked to have 7.5 pulled, and I was busy trying to find it on the other computer. There's an issue in there I have to speak to. If we could go back to 7.5 sometime tonight, I think it's necessary.
We also need to vote on the main motion.
Okay. We did pass 7.5, Councillor Hannah.
I did ask to have it pulled though, Mayor, and while I was looking it up, it got passed.
Okay, we'll circle back then. And what is your comment with respect to 7.5?
I believe the clerk has a point, Mayor.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. I just want to confirm with Councillor Hannah something, but first, Mayor Allen, the main motion as amended in 8.1 should be voted on. The vote was taken for the amendment, but not the main motion as amended.
Okay. And so we don't need to read the main motion as amended. People are understanding of it. No questions, concerns? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Circling back to 7.5, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be quick. The report from the Director of Finance, page 3 of 6. I have it up there, but I'll have to read it so the rest of the council knows what the issue is. The third point on that page 3.6, it says the forecasting model demonstrates that for water and wastewater services, the first half of the forecast period, existing customers in the township are subsidizing the Midhurst customers. However, subsequent to 2031 water and 2036 wastewater, the additional Midhurst customers are keeping rates lower. I believe that it's misleading there because the Midhurst residents are not being subsidized by Springwater Township. It's the new development that's going to be subsidized by all of Springwater Township, including the current residents of Midhurst. I'm just suggesting that that comment in there is misleading in the report and it should be corrected.
Director Radigan.
Thank you, through Mayor Allen to Councillor Hannah. The majority of that wording is taken directly out of the report itself. It did come directly from Watson and Associates.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, I understand. Through you, Mayor, to the Director of Finance, but it is a misstatement in there. And if council approves this 7.5 without misstatement in there, I think then it's inappropriate. We need to just say that somehow change the wording so it indicates that it's the new development of the new residents in Springwater that are being subsidized by all of Springwater.
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. As 7.5 was voted on and disposition was advised by the mayor. Councillor Hannah, if you wish to see any changes, you would have to ask for a reconsideration and then request an amendment to that motion to seek the changes that you are looking for.
Thank you. I will request a reconsideration and ask to have that report corrected. I'm not criticizing our Director of Finance because it was in the, as she stated, it was in the consultant's report, but the problem being is it's now in the township report that we're approving. And I believe that it's inappropriate for council to approve something that's not accurate.
It's just clarification, basically, Director Radigan, right?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to further clarify, I don't believe the motion actually has any wording in relation to the water or wastewater. If Councillor Hannah would like it corrected, that is definitely a possibility. But I would also suggest that is the wording directly from the actual consultant's report. I think in general, I do believe the understanding is that yes, the new growth will subsidize, but Midhurst as a whole will be subsidizing.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. My point being is that the consultant's report is received by council. This is a staff report that's being approved by council, and it has misinformation in it. If you read it the way I read it, it says that the Springwater residents are subsidizing the Midhurst customers. And that's wrong. That's not what the situation is. The new developer, or the new development is being subsidized by all of Springwater, including Midhurst. I'm just suggesting the rest of council doesn't have a problem with it, fine. I asked to have it pulled. I didn't speak to it because it got by me. I'm just pointing out that there's an error of misinformation. And if we want to approve stuff with misinformation, fine. I'm just pointing it out for council's information.
Would be Director Radigan, if you pointed that out to Watson, they could they adjust that and clarify that, and then the motion would apply to the adjusted clarification?
Through you, Mayor Allen, that's definitely not a problem. I could definitely forward it to Watson and Associates to provide further clarification.
Okay. Councillor Hannah?
Again, I'm pointing out a misinformation here to council, and if we're not going to correct it, then I don't know.
We're figuring out
forward.
We're figuring out how to rectify it, though, by Director Radigan pointing that out to Watson.
Thank you, but our residents that read this report in Springwater could get the impression they're subsidizing the residents of Midhurst for their water and wastewater. That's how it reads.
Okay. All right, Clerk Ainsworth, then the mechanics of putting forward a motion to address this then.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. As mentioned, it would still be a reconsideration of item 7.5. So council would have to vote on whether they would like to reconsider 7.5. If that is passed, then 7.5 would come back on the floor. We would need a mover and seconder. And then Councillor Hannah can then make an amendment as he wishes and for council's consideration on the matter.
Okay, Councillor Hannah, you're moving to reconsider?
Yes, please.
A seconder? Councillor Cabral? So do we need the verbiage read with respect to that reconsideration motion? Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. It would simply state that item 7.5 be hereby reconsidered, and there would be no debate or comment. It would go straight to a vote, Mayor Allen.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And just a procedural question. So the no debate or no consideration would be on the reconsideration, or the fact that we'd be reconsidering it, we would be able to then listen. So no comment or consideration on the reconsideration.
That's correct. Yeah, on the reconsideration.
Thank
You can
you.
comment on the new motion.
Perfect, thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Next, so we're back to 7.5. And Councillor Hannah, you're putting forward, do we put forward an amendment then, Clerk Ainsworth, to 7.5 as it's stated?
Yes, thank you. But first we would need to get another mover and seconder to put the motion back on.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin and Councillor Moore. All those in favor?
Mayor Allen?
Yes.
At this time, it would be no vote. It would be Councillor Hannah proposing his amendment.
Okay. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. The amendment is that the statement that suggests that Springwater residents are subsidizing the Midhurst customers for water and wastewater be corrected to indicate that it's the new residents in the Midhurst secondary plan that the Springwater Township residents will be subsidizing for water and wastewater until I believe it says 2031 and 2036.
Okay, seconder for that. Councillor Ritchie. Okay with that, Clerk Ainsworth?
Just a second.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. It was a little quick for me. If I could ask for a minute recess, I will call Councillor Hannah on the phone, get the amendment written down properly, and come back once we have it finalized. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Marilyn, may we recess during that conversation just for a quick bio break?
Yes, that's what we're doing now.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Lori. I need the phone. The clerk's calling.
Mayor Allen, I am ready with the amendment when you're ready to continue the meeting.
Thank you. We'll continue. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So the amendment moved by Councillor Hannah and seconded by Councillor Ritchie would read as follows: that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Add that the statement contained in the report stating the existing customers in the township are subsidizing the Midhurst customers be clarified to ensure that residents understand that the existing customers in the township are subsidizing the future customers in the Midhurst area and not current Midhurst customers.
Okay, you identify the report that you refer to in the motion, right?
Mayor Allen, no, it just states report. It doesn't identify whether it's the Watson report or the staff report.
Well, do you think it would be a good idea to identify which report so there's no future confusion?
We could. Could I get Director Radigan's advice on that, please?
Director Radigan?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Allen. The statement is directly from the long-range financial plan as well, so I would recommend providing clarification for the actual report itself, which in turn will then be reflected within the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So I did add into the motion, as long as it is okay with Councillor Hannah, the words in the long-range financial plan report.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to action reports. We're at 9.1. Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So that was a vote on the amendment. Now you would need to carry a vote on the main motion as amended.
On the main motion of 7.5. So go ahead and read the motion as amended, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The main motion as amended would read that the report from the Director of Finance regarding the long-range financial plan, policy recommendations, and next steps dated June 7th, 2021 be received, and that the Finance and Audit Advisory Committee recommends Council approve the policy recommendations outlined in Section 8.2 of Appendix A, the long-range financial plan report prepared by Watson and Associates. Further, that staff be directed to ensure through the development charges bylaw update that the long-range financial plan is provided for, and that the statement contained in the long-range financial plan report stating the existing customers in the township are subsidizing the Midhurst customers be clarified to ensure that residents understand that the existing customers in the township are subsidizing future customers in the Midhurst area and not current Midhurst customers.
Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, so we're moving to a 9.1 action reports. Mover and seconder, get these on the floor. Councillor Ma and Councillor Cabral. Any questions, comments, desire to pull 9.2 through 9.6? Okay, that the motion is that the action reports 9.2 through 9.6 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, ZB 2021-007, Adams, Reed 1238 Vesper Valley Road. Quality Care Program, QCP, Water Meter Reader Replacement, Center Vesper Water and Wastewater Phase 2, Security Release and Final Assumption. All those in favor? Is carried. Item 10.1, information reports. Mover and seconder to get this on the floor. Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coghlan. We have items 1 through 6. Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm just going to request that you seek a secondary seconder, as I will be calling conflict on 10-1-6.
Yes, okay. Another seconder, please. Councillor Ma and Clerk Ainsworth, you had card up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. With the Deputy Mayor's conflict, I have already pulled item 6 for separate consideration.
Yes.
So it would be items 1 to 5 and then 6 separately.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions with 1 through 5? I'd like to make comment on 3. Anybody else have anything? Okay. So item 3 is the proposed amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act. I'll turn it over to CEO Schmidt, but we have until June 27th to make some comments on this phase 1 report, which was attached to the staff report. And so CEO Schmidt, maybe you could expand upon that, and then I'll make some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So as provided for in the report this evening, essentially the province, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks currently has a consultation out through the Environmental Registry of Ontario, the ERO posting, and they're seeking comments back from various councils and municipalities as it relates to these proposed amendments. So essentially, as I understand it, they are proposed amendments relating to the Conservation Authorities Act. There is a 2-phased approach. The first phase is essentially right now, and they're looking at identifying and proposing what the core mandated programs would be for the conservation authorities in Ontario. And in addition to that, any of the non-core programs would essentially require an MOU between the conservation authorities and the participating or applicable municipality in order for any municipal levy to be considered as part of a funding source. And just with that, on the core mandated programs, essentially those would be funded by municipal levies on a go-forward basis. Phase 2 really speaks to the breakdown of municipal levies and what those would look like. And so that's not really part of phase 1. Phase 1, again, is really just to confirm what the core mandated services of conservation authorities are. And maybe I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor. Staff at this stage, again, not my area of expertise, but staff at this stage don't have any comments beyond what's in the report, and just looking for any comments that council may have as it relates to what's being proposed in those regulations.
Okay, Councillor Moore, then Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I was having internet connection trouble, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss action report 9.1. Did you already vote on that by any chance? I'm not sure where we're at.
Yes, we voted. We're past action reports.
Can I just ask, I'm sorry, that we go back to 9.2? I just had a quick request.
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt. So after we're tidy up what the CAO was talking about.
Okay. All right. So we'll go back to 9.2. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. In regards to the, no, I got lost. In regards to what we were talking about, in regards to the Conservation Authorities Act, has there been a breakdown of the core mandated services with the conservation authorities? Have they outlined what these mandated services are, so that we can get some clarification on this?
Well, the province has in the attachment provincial document to the report that CAO Schmidt did, they set out mandatory programs and services, which included risk of natural hazards, management of CAO-owned land, responsibilities under the Clean Water Act, Lake Simcoe Regional CA responsibilities, provincial water quality and quantity monitoring and development of core watershed-based resource management strategy. It's a pretty heavy report, the provincial report, but basically they define those as proposed mandatory programs, and then they go into non-mandatory programs. And the time frame that the government is looking for is that they're looking to the CAs, each conservation authority, to come up with an inventory of programs and services and consult with the municipalities and develop some form of agreement and steps that are going to be taken to get new agreements, memorandum of understanding by December 31st, 2021. Then in 2022, the government's looking for quarterly updates on the progress of finalization of these agreements. And by December 31, 2022, the conservation authorities and municipal agreements would need to be in place for transition into the new arrangement in the 2023 budgets. So specific to the NVCA, I would say no. The particular mandatory programs haven't been inventoried and defined, but the comment for June 27th is basically commenting on this phase one methodology that the government set out for determination of the mandatory programs and non-mandatory programs.
I think, Mayor Allen, if I can just speak, I think I welcome the changes. I welcome the direction that they're taking. I don't really see any heavy heading of anything until after the next election. But having said that, I think even the services that they're kind of outlining, there still seems to be there's going to have to be a lot more discussion on that. Those are kind of vague, but again, meaningful discussion with the conservation authorities. It's a long road, but I think it's a start in scoping down and keeping that road fairly narrow as to what they're going to do. But I welcome these changes, much needed as far as that. We will have to be diligent and scrutinizing these and going after this stuff. So, but I think we're on the right path. Thank you.
Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Marilyn. Just real quick, that's one of the things I found was the mandatory ones are pretty easy to understand, but when it came to the non-mandatory ones that the conservation authorities develop on their own, it was very vague. So it was kind of tough to know what we might be looking at having to pay for or not pay for through a memorandum of understanding. So it'd be nice to see when they actually do come back out, because those ones there seem to be very, very vague. It'll be whatever the local conservation authority, I guess, wants to put in place, be it education or whatever. But I did have a question with respect to the Community Advisory Board. And just if anybody knows the answer to this is, I know it uses the term advisory board on there, but will they have any ability to direct any of the programming or councils, or would strictly be an advisory capacity?
I believe it's an advisory capacity, but CAO Schmidt had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cabral. On that, I believe it just is an advisory board, no direct control over the conservation authority, if you will. And just further to your comment, Councillor Cabral, about the non-mandatory, just to be clear, so the MOUs would have to come to both the CA board, the Conservation Authority Board, as well as council before they could be approved. And if either party or council didn't agree to that, then obviously we wouldn't be in a position where we would want to be putting municipal levy or funding towards that. So it's my understanding that unless there's an MOU agreed upon by both parties, council and the CA board, then those non-mandatory programs would not be supported by municipal funding.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, then back to Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Marilyn. And I think that for time's sake, most of my questions or concerns, I believe, will be at the next step during this process. I think that it's a good first step in that in the preliminary discussions or conferences or information sessions being provided, are providing information such as they've established buckets is what they're calling them, and they're calling them the core bucket and the non-core bucket. And that establishment on its own is, I guess at this point, the first phase is, do we support that there's two separate buckets, one being what we consider a core mandate from the conservation authorities, and then the second one, which will have an entirely different conversation as to who mandates it, what we need, what we don't need, and at a more in-depth or granular level at the next conversation. So for this conversation this evening, I don't have a lot of concern because I believe that the memorandum of understanding pertaining to our tax levy will be at the next step with our CA discussion. And I do agree with Councillor Ritchie that I don't foresee that next step being anytime soon. My concern then would be, does the municipality have any MOUs with SSEA, NVCA, or any other service partner at this point that will be lapsing during this time that we need to be aware of? Just so that we don't kind of put ourselves on pause and then find ourselves locked into something else. I understand that the SSEA does require a exit clause of 2 years. So I'm just curious if our council does choose just not to pursue comment at this time, are we doing any disservice to our residents through that?
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to Deputy Mayor Coghlan. So you may be aware, Deputy Mayor Coghlan, that to my knowledge, there's two MOUs currently in place, and the one council has already somewhat addressed, and we actually had a township staff, MVCA and SCCA recently had a conversation to start the discussions as it relates to their provision of services of what the MVCA provides for and what the SSEA provides for in the SSEA watershed. And so those discussions have commenced based on direction from council. My understanding is, though, there's a separate MOU between the township and the SSEA, which to my knowledge is not currently being reviewed. The SSEA, as you know, is not a CA, and so it would not be form part of this discussion from what I understand. That said, willing to reach out to the SSEA and commence discussions should council wish to proceed in doing so.
Is your finger up there, Deputy Mayor Coghlan? Thank you.
Thank you. And just further to that, understanding that the SSEA is not a CA, or my concern is with the gypsy moths and the programs available through the SSEA with our invasive species initiatives. I have been a proponent, or I'm trying to champion a program for spring water that does not have an overlap in the services provided, so that we're not paying two people for one. My question then is, are we confident moving forward with simply the NVCA in a prevention or a invasive species initiative without the SSEA available to us?
CAO Schmidt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Coghlan. Not sure I can answer that question, to be honest with you, or whether it was directed to me or other members of council. But regardless of that, I will comment that we are hoping to have, separate matter but related, hoping to have the MVCA come to the next council meeting to discuss, provide clarity to the MVCA levy matter that was previously discussed with council, and at that same meeting hoping to have a further dialogue with council on a couple other matters as it relates to the MVCA and SSEA, which hopefully would maybe address Deputy Mayor Coghlan's question tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Mayor Allen, I just want to mention this MOU that's going to be coming forward there through these new changes, I can see there's going to be a difference of opinion. We're going to want something, they're going to want something, and there's going to have to be a third party there to, and I can see where the government's going to have to step in. I hope they're providing for this going forward, because there's going to have to be somebody there to break the tie to put this thing in place, and I'm hoping the government realizes this going forward. I'm assuming they do, because this new stuff we're seeing coming forward here, these memorandum of understandings, I can see there being problems there down the road, and somebody's going to have to step in and say, okay, MVCA, this is what it is. This is what you're going to have to do. And I think that message needs to be relayed right down to Queen's Park, and I hope you can do that as a mayor. Okay.
So that's one point that I think we should make in some sort of a response back by June 27th to this phase one. Another one is in phase one, how much of the Conservation Authority involvement in planning approvals is mandatory versus non-mandatory? And what specific recommendations can we consider submitting related to this? So I'd be interested in Director Spagnell's opinion with respect to what could we float with as a response to this paper, phase one paper, that would involve the NVCA less in planning approvals than is currently the case.
Mayor Allen, may I?
Yes, go ahead. Before
I just want to comment on what you're saying there. That's very, very important. And they've had an overreaching hand for far too long. And I think we don't have to look too far, is go to the Severn Sound that comments to the municipality, membering municipalities in their jurisdiction. They give their comments, they take that into consideration, but at the end of the day, it's the municipality that has the last say. And I don't think we need to look far as to go and ask them as to how they do it, and work with them and take that idea and let the MVCA know to say, you know what, at the end of the day, we've listened to you, but this is what we're going to do. And that's the end of the story. And I welcome those changes that the government's bringing forward with that. Severn Sound are the answer to that.
So Director Spagnell, what sort of comments could we make to set the stage for us to want to take back control of as much of the planning as possible?
Thank you, Marilyn. I think the first step is being taken now by looking at the I guess the buckets, I guess, as the deputy mayor put it, where various core services are being identified. There could be further elaboration as into seeking clarification from the province as to what aspects of the planning process are considered to be mandatory, I guess, mandatory responsibilities under the Conservation Authorities Act. So for example, when you're talking about hazard lands, typically the NVCA has jurisdiction over watersheds, over floodplains, over anything where there's development related that could have an impact, whether it be financially or it could be a health risk or something of that, a safety risk, something of that nature. But there could be, I guess, comments from council asking for clarification as to what in particular the NVCA is to be responsible for through the planning process. And I think that we're already heading down that road. So I don't know if you're looking for specifics as to whether or not the NVCA would comment on stormwater management per se, if there's not a hazard land risk associated with that. I'm not sure if you're looking for specific reviews that are being completed by the NVCA, which might need to be, or by the conservation authorities, which may need to be better clarified through this process. But I think that can definitely be included in council's comments.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a response on behalf of council through staff by the 27th. And it would be good to incorporate what we're just talking about in planning and how we can pull back or how we can use an alternative source than the Conservation Authority for all of the planning approvals that are now required. So put that in the right technical speak from a planning perspective. I'd also like to see question with respect to the MVSA having jurisdiction only in its watershed and not on all of the municipality if it's not in their watershed, as we've discussed before. And then to Councillor Ritchie's point about a third-party arbitrator being the government, if that's necessary, in finalizing the core versus non-core mandates. So those are the three things I'd like to see in a staff drafted response by the 27 to this phase 1. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn, and further to that conversation, I also think that the request for funding, as all of the municipalities in Ontario are going to be required to create these MOUs, and there will be legal ramifications or costs associated with that. Where is the province? Obviously, they would download it, but I think to just to highlight that the extra cost on not just staff time and not just what we as a council are going to be putting into that, but how are these MOUs going to come to fruition? Understanding that we've had questions before as to why can't we just have it in-house? Why can't there just be a Simcoe County Conservation Authority rather than the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority? So all these different avenues and all, there's going to be what I believe many different staff reports generated by many different municipalities as to the ideas of the council. So my question would then be, when we're putting forth these comments, how is the province outlining the discourse moving forward? What are they going to be requiring from the municipalities as a lower tier, as an upper tier, and where do we come into play? What say are we actually going to have in that? Because I think, and through you, Mayor Allen, to Director Spagnell, I've had many conversations about what's happening in our neighboring municipalities and what's happening at the county table. And also, I guess I'm just an advocate, or I guess the opposite of an advocate for the buckets or the provisions of the CAs in Ontario and their jurisdiction. I think it's unfortunate when we're doing a ditch locate and we need an NVCA permit in order to do a locate or pool permit. So where is it the provision of the municipality to create those changes? And when do we actually require changes from our conservation authorities? So what can we do in-house to alleviate some of the constraints of red tape that our residents experience? And at what point is that an MOU with our conservation authorities? So I think if there is any staff report being generated to have, you know, what the province is expecting from the municipalities, what we can do in-house, whether it's alleviating some permitting processes or whatever we can do. And then thirdly, just learning from our neighbors. I know Oromodonte and Wasaga Beach have been moving forward with changes to their CA delegations. Just learning from our neighbors as well. So I think those three avenues would be very beneficial to council's consideration.
Did you get all that, Director?
I've given it to him many times. It's fine.
Mayor Allen, the good thing about these recordings is we can always go back and listen again if we need the clarification. But what I gather is it's refinements and clarifications as to where we require a conservation authority to do certain reviews and what can be third-partied or taken care of at the municipal level to remove some of the delays and some of the red tape that gets caught up in the process now.
Okay, thank you. So Clerk Ainsworth, what do we need in the way of direction to staff to craft a letter incorporating the comments that we've made to get it in by June 27th.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I will take direction from CAO Schmidt on that. If he would like it encompassed in a resolution, or if staff will proceed with those comments.
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, a good discussion amongst council tonight, and I think we have an understanding as to what it is that council is looking for here. And so happy to work with Director Spagno and the clerk Ainsworth on providing those comments before the 27th deadline to the ministry. And again, just to reiterate again, what they're looking for are your comments on the core mandated programs, the non-core or the non-mandatory, I guess. To my understanding is that although the municipality may want some programs, non-mandatory programs, if the CA is not willing to provide for that, then there's a challenge there. And conversely, if the NVSA or the CA decides that they have programs that they deem are advisable to the township or the municipality, and the municipality is not interested in those non-mandatory programs, then those programs could proceed, but the municipality would not be responsible for any funding as it relates to those programs. This is the non-mandatory programs that I'm speaking of specifically. And to Councillor Ritchie's comment, who decides, who makes that final decision? My understanding is that yourselves would make that final decision. If you don't agree to an MOU with the NVCA in this particular case, then you're not committing the municipality to provide funding for those programs. The CA could continue with those programs, provided that they have other fees and or user fees and or other revenues and or grants that they could utilize to perform those services. But the municipality would not be on the hook for providing funding for those services.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And CEO Schmidt just brought up another point that was involved in other discussions, in that while municipalities are in negotiations with their CAs, understanding that some municipalities may not be able to come to an agreement with their CA, should there be a, heaven forbid, natural disaster, flooding, or the responsibility they're living lying, who's responsible for that? Who, just in that the fact that the province is going to be putting forth to us the responsibility to create a C or an MOU in the time where there is no MOU available, where does the responsibility lie? If we don't have a MOU with the CA, are our building permits going to be able to move forward? Is the menacing wetlands protected? Is there still stewardship programs moving forward at our schools? How does that happen if in the interim of us establishing MOU for our non-core mandated services?
Well, I think the current arrangement would exist until a new MOU is finalized. They've set out the timeframes and provided for an extension, as is detailed in the report and the attachment. You can seek an extension into 2023, but you have to have a reason for doing it. Otherwise, the government's expecting a new agreed upon MOU negotiated.
Mm-hmm. And if that isn't reached, how do we move? Just understanding, Mayor Allen, and if I can speak candidly, there has been many talks between us, and that's why I remain silent at the first part of this, is that this is an ongoing and lengthy conversation, and I'm the one who tends to drag it out. But I can foresee us having issues with establishing our non-mandated, non-core services with the NVCA.
Well, that gets back to Councillor Ritchie's point of
who's in the driver's seat?
Is there an arbitration process if that's necessary? So that's why we need to mention that in our response, as what if we can't come to agreement?
That'll happen.
Okay.
And
go ahead, Deputy Mayor. Did you have another point?
It was further to the arbitration portion and the fees associated with it. It was are our residents going to be able to get building permits? Are schools still going to have their stewardship programs? I'm just curious as to who is in the driver's seat while these negotiations are moving forward, us or the conservation authorities? Because I think that needs to be established as we move forward through that process.
Well, who's in the driver's seat? It's business as per the current agreement until a new agreement takes its place. So it's not a work to rule because we haven't agreed on a new MOU. It's business as has been the case until a new MOU is finalized.
And is that an assumption or is that in writing somewhere?
It's implied by the government document that came out. CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, I would agree that essentially all current legislation, if you will, remains in place until essentially January 1st, 2023, when new MOUs are to be put in place. And if extensions are required beyond January 1st, 2023, then the province will look at those extensions.
Okay, so I think that staff, good comments, good discussion. The staff will go ahead and draft a response by June 27th based on that. So we had a mover and seconder. There weren't any others from 1 to 5. So the motion is that the report items listed herein be received as information. The building services monthly report for January through April 21. Bylaw services monthly activity report May 21. The proposed amendments to the Conservation Authority Act. The award of corporate telephone system OP 2021-003 and ZB 2021-006 re 3352 Crossland Road, with the exception of development charges exemption for auxiliary units to be dealt with separately. Councillor Cabral.
Sorry, Mayor Allen, I did want to question number disregard.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. All right, so with respect to item 6, development charges, Deputy Mayor Coughlin has declared a conflict. And Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Did you want to do information report number 6 now, or did you want me to go back to the one previous?
Okay, let's go back.
The Deputy Mayor is here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good call. What's the item number again, please?
9.2.
Community
The Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So, through you, Mayor Allen, then to the CAO. I was going to put forward an item for future consideration, but I'll ask your advice on whether or not we can incorporate the AED policy that is yet to be developed into the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So what I think the township needs around the AEDs, and we've seen this come forward previously, is a policy about cost sharing. And so if a community does raise money for an AED, that there is a relationship with the municipality and a cost sharing if they decide to put it in a park, the electricity, the batteries, that kind of thing. So in the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, the priority is community safety, of course, but the focus, I believe, was, number 1, mental health, number 2, housing, and number 3, access to services. So I do think that the AED policy would fit within the access to services, because it's about, access to all kinds of different things for people who are close by and then people who are more rural.
Yep.
So I don't know, CAO, if you want to incorporate a policy into this and share it with all of South Georgian Bay, and we could use ourselves as sort of a model, or do you want me to put it forward as an item for future consideration as just an independent policy request?
That's a good suggestion, Councillor Moore. CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Councillor Moore. Appreciate the comments. I think, not having had that information ahead of time, to be quite honest with you. I think my position would be is that we still move forward with the approval of the community safety and well-being plan just due to the legislative requirement. But to your point, maybe an item for future consideration to develop that AED policy, which again, happy to share with our partners within Simcoe County, to be honest with you, not just the South Georgian Bay area. Happy to, yeah.
I'll bring it up after.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're moving back down to item 6 in information items, development charges. A mover and Deputy Mayor Coughlin, is she just muting or leaving the meeting?
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm just turning my camera off for this portion.
All right. A mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore. Okay, given the presentation, any discussions? I know generally in information reports we don't discuss this, but any comments that want to be raised? Failing which, the motion is that the development charges and exemption of auxiliary units report be received. All those in favor? It is carried. Verbal reports, Director Spagnell, official plan and economic development update.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I do not have anything new to report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Schmidt, Midhurst development update, and then COVID update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Midhurst development update. So a couple of things here for council's information. So the utility campus or the treatment lands first. So the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks has approved the drinking water license for the water treatment plant, and preliminary site grading has been completed, and the contractor for the water treatment plant has mobilized on site and is preparing to commence construction of the plant or that facility shortly. Staff is ready to issue the building permit, and we're just waiting for final execution of the external works agreement to be completed, which we hope will be done in the next day or two here. Furthermore, construction on Snow Valley Road for the storm sewer and water main crossings did commence yesterday, and it is anticipated this work will take approximately 2 weeks, weather permitting. Notices were provided to residents in the area last Friday, and information can also be found on the township's website regarding this project. In addition, the sanitary sewer crossing under Snow Valley is anticipated also to be completed by the end of this month, June that is. As it relates to the mixed subdivision, the internal servicing of the subdivision is almost complete. It's about 95% complete. Internal road building is approximately 15% complete, and it's anticipated that the base asphalt will be completed by mid-July. And then lastly, the sales office, it is well underway and is anticipated that it will open to the public in August, September of this year. Signage has been erected on the site, advertising the development as Midhurst Valley. And there are 4 key builders that are included in this development. Those are Brookfield Residential, Countrywide, Geranium, and Sundance Homes. And that concludes my update on Midhurst. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
All right, I don't see anything, so please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So COVID update. So as of last Friday, June 11th, the province has moved into step 1 of the roadmap to reopen. And it's anticipated that will remain in this step for at least, or at this stage for at least 21 days. Step 1 does focus on resuming outdoor activities with smaller crowds, where risk of transmission is lower, and permitting limited indoor settings with restrictions. That said, everyone is advised to continue to follow public health measures, advice, and restrictions. What does this mean for you? So outdoor gathering limits and organized public events are permitted up to 10 people. Outdoor dining is permitted up to 4 people per table. Essential retail is permitted to open for in-person shopping with maximum capacity limits of 25%. Non-essential retail is permitted to open for in-person shopping with maximum capacity limits of 15%. Outdoor sports training, fitness classes, and personal training are permitted up to 10 people. No games or scrimmages are permitted at this time. Day camps are permitted to open with restrictions on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. Overnight camping at campgrounds and campsites, including Ontario parks and short-term rentals, are permitted. Outdoor pools and splash pads, etc., are permitted to open. As you know, schools are to remain closed for in-person learning for the remainder of the school year, and provincial borders with Manitoba and Quebec are fully reopened as of today. From a township perspective, the Township Administration Center reopened to the public this past Monday, June 14th. Administration staff are back to their modified staffing schedules, so Team A, Team B, whereby one day they are in the office and the next day they're working remotely. The township's public libraries continue to operate under the same existing format, so continue to provide curbside pickup. I'm happy to report that Camp Springwater Summer 2021 has officially been launched. It's available to residents of Springwater who are between the ages of 6 to 12 years of age. Camp will run from July 5th to August 27th. Program will be modified and will create a fun and safe environment for children to interact and experience physically distanced camp games, outdoor adventure, arts and crafts, and other activities. Games and camps activities will be modified to promote physical distancing and will be planned to spend the majority of the day outdoors. For further information, please check out the township website. And I do want to thank all staff who have been involved to date in preparing for this, and a special thank you to Brianna Dean, who has led the charge on this initiative. With regards to vaccinations, so approximately 448,000, just under 448,000 doses of COVID vaccine have been administered in Simcoe Muskoka, of which 337,000 have received their first dose, which represents approximately 62.4% of our population. In addition, over 73,000 have received both doses, which represents just over 12.1% of our population. As of yesterday, Springwater has had 279 confirmed cases of COVID, which is an increase of 4 cases since my last update on June 2nd. 265 of those have recovered, 1 is in hospital, and 2 have passed. And that concludes my update for this evening. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions of that? All right, moving on to county updates. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And our last meeting of County Council incorporated our MCR review, or our MCR. And although it was of great length, there wasn't anything of significant notice to report to Council this evening.
You might mention today's county meeting. I don't know how many tuned into that. The conference that went on today at county, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so I can speak to that as well. Mayor Allen, sorry, that was not, it was a county conference being offered, and I did send out a reminder to members of council as to that. So it was from 8:30 until 1 o'clock today, and it was primarily about leadership and provided a virtual experience. It was very well put on, but again, it's always difficult in these situations when you look to a networking event to actually network with other municipalities, and you're confined to the online or virtual experience. So within the parameters that are presented to us today with today's COVID experience, it was very well done. And I especially the keynote speaker was very well noted and definitely provided some perspective. It was Canada's gold medalist, or I guess first silver medalist, and just in her differing experiences through that. So that was today, and if there's any questions pertaining to it, I'm happy to answer, but nothing specific.
Okay, thank you. Municipal updates. Any municipal updates? CEO Schmidt.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, and just wanted to further comment on Deputy Mayor's comments on that county update. I just wanted to extend a sincere thanks to my colleague and friend CAO Mark Aiken and his staff for a well planned and conference. I think it was an exceptional conference. I do take the Deputy Mayor's comments. Networking is a challenge, but I think in the short time frame that they had to put this on, it was exceptional. So kudos to them. So
Deputy Mayor?
And just further to the CEO's point on that, I think that while the networking portion of the conferences is capped, because it's virtual, the presenters are from far and wide, and we may be more apt to learn from people who, if it was in person, I mean, the keynote speaker was from Calgary today, so would the person have participated in a Simcoe County event, been they required to physically be here? I don't know. So there is pros and cons to both aspects of it. And I do hope that my comments were not taken as a negative, but just as it is a networking event, and I do thoroughly miss the networking perspective, which will lead into my municipal comment, Mayor Allen, if I may.
Go ahead.
I have two. Surprise. The first one would just be that further to the learning opportunity today, I do have an opportunity, I guess anyone has an opportunity, but the FCM has put forward their committees, have opened up their committees for municipal elected officials to apply to. And I was going through the application process today, and the application does require consent of council. Not any monetary consent, but just the endorsement of council. And the committee that I'm seeking to sit on is increasing women's participation in municipal government. And I am asking council for their endorsement on that this evening.
You're asking for it by way of a motion, or how do they want a letter, or what do they want?
So I was speaking with Clerk Ainsworth to that earlier today. The easiest, I think, is they were looking for a resolution, but they would also accept a just a letter of endorsement from council as well.
Okay. Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would like to maybe move that Deputy Mayor sits on this committee and endorse the letter through council so she can apply.
Seconded by Councillor Cabral, I presume. All those in favor? It is carried. Good luck with it, Deputy Mayor. You had another point?
I will give you a prize. My last point was, I guess, empathy or condolences to the township of Wasaga Beach, or the town of Wasaga Beach, and what they're experiencing as the nicer weather comes along, but most recently what they've experienced over the weekend with the tragedies. And through that, I extend that to Mayor Bifolchi and Deputy Mayor Bray, but also as a thank you to the residents of Springwater and to the visitors of Springwater, in that although we've had pushback and back and forth through COVID, we haven't experienced the disrespect that other municipalities have experienced, or I mean, on our trails, they're well kept. There's not a lot of debris left behind, and even in our parking lots, or maybe I'm just speaking specifically to the one down the road from me. It's an ATV lot, and there's nothing left behind. So thank you to the residents of Springwater. Maybe they pick up a little trash on their daily walks to help keep our communities clean, or the residents who, or the visitors to our municipality. But my absolute condolences to the municipality or the town of Wasaga Beach. It's horrific what they're dealing with right now.
Thank you. I'll just point out that in the Bylaw Services Monthly Activity Report for May 21, there were 70 ATV and dirt bike complaints versus 11 last year. So they might pick up their garbage, but Deputy Mayor?
I thank you, Mayor Allen. And further to that comment, Councillor Cabral had reached out to our Bylaw Services in months past about the complaints and the number of complaints coming forward. And I think it's also very important to acknowledge that while the report will indicate that there was 70 complaints, in months previous, there was 44 complaints, 40 from one resident and 4 from other residents. So while the number of complaints does give us an idea of what our department is dealing with, it does not always give an accurate snapshot of how residents feel about bylaw issues within the municipality.
Okay, thank you. Any other municipal updates? I believe the farmers market is opening this Friday, Councillor Cabral, right?
Yes, Mayor Allen, you're absolutely right. 9 to 2. And if anybody's out there, there will be some vendors and produce there. But of course, there'll still be crowds and the face masks and the social distancing is still in effect. So welcome to come on out, but come prepared.
Okay, no other municipal updates. We'll move on to notice of motion. Any notices of motion? Items for future consideration. We had a couple of those. So start with Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So through you to the clerk, I guess my item for future consideration would be to have the township create a policy around cost sharing for AEDs for when a neighborhood brings a request forward, that we have a standard to go by and a policy in place so we don't get caught. We did the last time a little bit.
Okay. Councillor Hannah?
Sorry, I thought it was my turn to advance my notice of motion.
Okay. Clerk Ainsworth, do we need to vote on that?
Mayor Allen, yes, and it would also require a seconder.
Seconder for that, Councillor Cabral. All those in favor? That is carried. Another item of future consideration, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. The favorite discussion, of course, in the southern part of the township is the infestation of gypsy moths, the frustration about residents. I don't know how it is in the rest of the township, but if you can't experience what's in the southern part, you can understand residents' frustrations. I deal with the phone calls pretty well 2 or 3 a day, if not more. And I think it's just because people are so frustrated they need some place to vent. My notice of motion would be that council director asked our county representatives, being the mayor and the deputy mayor, to advance the concerns of the residents with regard to the gypsy moths and direct council staff, if we can, to consider options or plans to eradicate the gypsy moths in 2022. Because it's my understanding it's too late to do anything about it at the current time. But I think we need to be prepared for next year so people can go through this again. You can't even sit outside, barbecue or anything. It's a nightmare. The other part of my motion would be that we put something in the township link updating the residents to what the exact situation is when it comes to what we can do and what we can't do, and what our plans are, if any, going forward for 2022.
So, Councillor Hannah, you referred to it as a notice of motion. We're at items for future consideration. Are you introducing this as an item for future consideration?
Oh, sorry, I guess it's been a long day, so my apologies. Just put down what I said and move it down to items for future consideration. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All those in favor of what Councillor Hannah just proposed? Is carried. Thank you.
No, sorry, Mayor Allen, for just point of order. If it's an IS, we do require a vote, but if it's a notice of motion, there is no vote.
Councillor Hannah just said move it down, so it is an IFC.
Then we voted on Councillor Moore's, which was a notice of motion.
No, it was an IFC.
And Councillor Hannah's is then a
IFC.
I thought you said move it down. My apologies.
Down is from 12 to 13 on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, any other IFCs? Okay. Mover and seconder for the bylaws, please. Councillor Moore, Councillor Ma. That the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk, 2021-068. Appoint municipal law enforcement officer, 2021-069. Medical director services agreement, quality of care, and 5000-336 ZB 2021-007. Adams, 3 Adams. All those in favor? It is carried. Confirmatory bylaw, mover and seconder. Councillor Moore, Councillor Cabral, that bylaw 2021-071 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of Council at the regular meeting held on June 16, 2021, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That is carried. Mover and seconder for adjournment, please. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Moore, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater is now adjourned at 9:16 p.m. to meet again, a regular meeting on July 2nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. with all of us having received our second vaccination shot. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you and good night. Good meeting.